Welcome and thank you for coming. And let's just talk a little bit about the agenda today. Okay. And one of the things that I want to do in today's session really is there's going to be two parts of it. And the first part is going to be one of the largest parts, which is really, let's talk a little bit about background information on conjoint analysis. And we're going to talk about what it is, how it is used, and what are some of the key concepts. Now, I also want to let you know that today's session is for people that are sort of beginning their journey in conjoint analysis. Okay, if you're an expert in conjoint analysis, you've done dozens of projects in conjoint analysis, this session is really not for you. Okay, you're probably not going to learn anything new. If you're beginning your journey in conjoint analysis and would like to understand the concepts, what it is, what it means, how to use it, how to do, various designs and all those kind of things, then this session is for you. Okay. The second part is a case study, which is basically let's look at a client request, a client's objective, and let's set up a conjoint analysis based on that, and then let's go ahead and field it and maybe even look at the results. Okay. Now, I really want to make sure that I want to get to that second part. And the first part is kind of hefty and meaty. And so I'm gonna go a little bit faster, and it's gonna look like I'm hurrying, but really I just want to get to that second part. And that's why I'm going to be talking fast. Now, because I'm going to be talking a little bit faster, if it kind of goes fast for you, please go ahead and watch the recording, and that hopefully will help. Normally I would talk a little bit slower, but we have quite a lot to go through, and hopefully this is going to be fantastic material for you to go into. So let's talk about what are the concepts in choice analytics and conjoint analysis. And when I say choice analytics, we're really talking about discrete choice, conjoint analysis. There's different names for it. They don't completely exactly mean the same thing, but discrete choice is like a part of conjoint analysis. Conjoint analysis is a larger umbrella, basically. But what are the concepts that we're going to be talking about today? Okay, so first of all, let's talk about conjoint analysis and what it really is. Now, I'm not going to talk about the history of it, but let's just define what conjoint analysis is. We'll talk about a choice task, and what is really a choice task? How is it used? We'll talk about mentioning of the experimental design, what it is for, and what kind of different kinds of experimental designs there may be. We'll be talking quite a bit about attributes and levels, which are the building blocks of conjoint analysis. We'll talk about prohibitions, how to use them, how to not use them, and of course, utilities. Okay, we'll talk about utilities, what they are, and how to look at them. We'll talk a bit about analysis approaches and analysis methodologies. Hierarchical Bayesian is one that is fairly common and becoming, more common. But we'll touch on what's the difference between that and what's called multinomial logit. I don't necessarily want to scare you guys away with these fancy names, but it's good. It's a really good thing to know what they are. We'll mention latent class briefly. Latent class MNL, there's an L that's missing there as well, and what that's used for, and concepts such as sensitivity, willingness to pay. Okay, so hopefully you'll learn quite a bit in this session, and I really hope that you'll feel just a lot more confident after the session is over. So let's level things, and what really is conjoint analysis? And this is a little bit of an official description of conjoint analysis. And conjoint analysis is a statistical technique used mainly in market research, but it can also be used in various other principles as well, as you'll see, to measure, analyze how consumers make trade-off decisions when evaluating a select product or services that have multiple attributes. And most products and services have multiple attributes. Even if I take something as simple as, a bottle of water, all of a sudden the bottle of water, it can have minerals, it cannot have minerals. It's by this brand or that brand. So most products really have multiple attributes. So conjoint analysis is really good for those kind of decision making. Conjoint analysis involves presenting survey respondents with a series of hypothetical scenarios, which is the choice task, and I'll show you a couple of examples of that, where the different combinations of these attributes and levels are systematically varied. They look like they're randomly varied, but there's actually some method to the madness behind how these attributes are varied. And then conjoint analysis analyzes respondents' choices. And it can also be ratings, by the way, so it doesn't necessarily have to be choices, but mainly today we'll be talking about choices, and these are discrete choices. And then conjoint analysis then determines the relative importance of these different attributes and estimates what's called the utility or the value customers assign to each of these attributes. So that's conjoint analysis. And what is it used for? Okay, what's conjoint analysis used for? Well, let's just look at one somewhat random example here. Is, let's imagine that you work for Ford Motor Company, and or maybe you're a consultant to Ford Motor Company, and you want to understand what people are willing to pay for an electric vehicle that's made by Ford. Okay, so your objective is, well, what are customers willing to pay? How should I price this product? That's coming out. For example, well, you can set up a conjoint analysis that, for example, the choice tasks that you're looking at here right now have various attributes and their levels. It's the three products that you see. One is a Tesla, and then a Chevy, and then the Ford, and one is a sedan and a compact. These are the various price points. This is the capacity of the product of the car. It's 5-seater, it's a 6-seater, the color may be one of the attributes that you want to vary and understand, potentially, if it's relevant. Or, if you're Henry Ford, you say it's only going to come in black, and be happy with that. Acceleration, one of the cool things that people want to buy electric cars for, or the reason is because, they accelerate very fast. And of course, you want to compare electric versus gas so that you can understand what people are willing to pay for when you go from a gas engine to an electric car, etc. Now, just a little disclaimer that every example that you will see in this webinar, they're not real examples. Okay, they're not actual projects. It's not like we're showing a client's project here. So these are all made up, but very similar to what it would be like, of course. So this is one example. And then the Ford manager, you as a Ford manager, then you want to understand, okay, let's look at potentially a sensitivity chart after I'm done with my conjoint task and I've analyzed it. And you can create sensitivity charts that, where the price really is varied for the product. And then you can combine it with volume information to then understand profitability and where can you optimize your contribution based on this sensitivity later on. So you can create price optimization kind of project after that. So this is just a quick example. I'm not going to go into detail. I'm not looking at the numbers. We'll talk a lot more about it a little bit later here. Conjoint analysis can be used in so many principles, in so many industries. Just yesterday, I actually happened to run into an acquaintance that was asking me about conjoint analysis, and the person works in the medical field. And yes, this can be done in the medical field, where they can understand a pharmaceutical company can understand the most optimal way to present potentially a pharmaceutical product, or a financial company that like to optimize the products that they offer within their application. Or one interesting study that this is not the real study, but actually something similar, where an HR function was trying to understand, what's the best way to come back to the office after COVID? What should be in the office? Should we require people to wear a mask or not require? How many number of days would we require people to be in the office? Should there be partitioning between desks? How about the use of meeting rooms? So there's so many various uses of conjoint analysis. Now, there's some typical and most common uses of conjoint analysis. For example, one of the most common reasons is to optimize price. Okay, so a common use is for conjoint analysis for optimizing price points or a product or service given its features or benefits in a typical market environment. Number two, some conjoint analysis can be used to determine the price of a newly developed feature, an application, a software application may be coming out with a new feature. Well, how much should we charge for the fact that now this new feature is available? Number three, you can optimize the product features, as you go from, for example, a bundled offering. What should be in the bundle? What combination is the most optimal combination of products that we're going to be offering in the bundle? Or if you have a base versus add-ons, what kind of features should be included in the base offering and not as an add-on? Very common application of conjoint analysis. And of course, you can actually use conjoint analysis for customer segmentation. Okay, I just caught a note that says that you cannot see the slides moving, and I'm sharing my screen. So is everybody seeing the slides moving, or is it just one of the? Oh, okay, you guys can see them. Okay. All right. So I apologize for AJ who cannot see the slides moving. But the issue may be on your end. So that could potentially be a connection issue. But let me continue, just because there's a lot of things that we need to go through here. We're going to get a little bit more and more detailed as we move forward. So conjoint analysis actually can be used for customer segmentation, and that is where a methodology called latent class MNL is a fantastic approach to do that as well. Okay, so moving on, let's just talk a bit about building blocks of conjoint analysis, which is attributes and levels. And what do we mean by attributes and level? And every product really has attributes about it. Okay, so in the example that I showed you earlier, you can see in the example, one of the products that you see there is a Chevy. It's a sedan. It's sold for $54,000. It's a 5-seater. It's purple. We cannot have enough purple Chevys, of course. It can accelerate to 60 miles per hour in 5 seconds, etc., etc. So these are the levels of the attributes of brand, car type, price, capacity, color, etc., etc. Now it's interesting because a respondent looks at it and the respondent sees 3 products: product 1, product 2, and product 3. And that's what a respondent's brain sees. But it really is, if you just look at it, it's really somewhat pseudo random combinations of attribute levels. It's a sedan, it's $54,000, it's 5-seat. And what you see really here is attribute levels next to one another. Okay, now the brain translates them as products, but really these are just the various attributes and their levels of what the brain translates as a product. And we do that with basically everything. It's a laptop. It's made by HP. It has this kind of RAM. It's this color, all those kind of things. These are all attributes that when we look at them, we see a product. And so that's kind of one of the concepts that you need to really understand in conjoint analysis. It's really just attributes and their various levels that people are selecting from. So these are the attributes and their levels. And what you saw here earlier, and this example here is, for example, it's a choice task. It's called a choice task. The respondent's task is to select the product that they would prefer. And they see quite a few of these in a regular survey. You can see anywhere between 8 to 10. And that is called the choice exercise. So as the respondent goes through, they go through the first one and they select the one that they prefer. And then they go on, and then they see the next one, which is also a somewhat pseudo-randomly created new combination of these attributes. And they are asked again, select the one that you like the most. And then they go on to the next one, and then the next one. This series, it's called the choice exercise. Now, you may ask, okay, well, how is it decided? How do you determine what respondents see? And that really takes us to the blueprint of the choice exercise and the choice task. It's called the experimental design. Okay, the experimental design really governs what it is that people see in the choice exercise. Now, this here looks as unappealing and boring as it possibly can be, but it has all the information that somebody needs to create a choice exercise. And this is called the experimental design. And the experimental design has the information that I mentioned. It can have, for example, on the left-hand side, it tells you what version of the design is being applied to the survey. Now you can see all of these rows basically refer to this is all in the first version. And you can have more than one version, and that's actually better to have more than one version. Sometimes you can have 10, 20, 100 different versions of an experimental design. And that's actually good. The more versions you have, the more opportunities you have that respondents don't necessarily see the same choice task. You know, if one respondent see a choice task from the first version and the second respondent see a choice task from the second or third or fifth or 17th version, they're most likely to see a different kind. And why is that? The reason is because we have, let's say we have, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 attributes, and each has, you know, 5 or 8 different levels. Then you can have hundreds and hundreds of combinations of these attributes and their levels. So you want to have a chance for people to see as many different combinations. But if, you know, one respondent sees potentially 10 combinations, well, is that enough for the model to really estimate really well? No, you probably want to see hundreds of different combinations of it for the model to really learn how people then choose out of these various combinations. So then you see the task, and the task really says which screen you're looking at. So the first screen, you can see the task is number 1. That's probably the first one here. This was the first task. This is the second task, the third task. And that's kind of what this kind of shows you here. And then it says, okay, on that first task, what are the concepts? The first concept, the second concept, the third concept, which is basically now the products next to one another. And this particular choice task, you see 3 concepts next to each other. But I've worked with choice task that had like 4 or 5 of them next to one another. And then, of course, it has information about the various attributes. Okay, it's a car brand. These are shorthand, but really this is the brand, this is the type of the car, this is the price, the capacity, the color, acceleration, etc. Now, what are all of these numbers? Okay, let's just kind of, and by the way, I just saw a question, Tristan, about none of the above. I'll touch on that just a second. Okay, so the experimental design here's an example of the same experimental design. Let's just talk about what are these numbers? What do they mean? Well, this here is the choice exercise, the choice task that we see. And there's also something called the levels and attributes grid. It's kind of hidden, it's in the background, but I just want to refer to it right now so that we'll understand what numbers mean what. Okay, so for example, this experimental design says that in the first version, in the first task, when you see the 3 concepts, concept number 1, 2, and 3, which is the 3 products next to one another, in the first attribute, which is car brand, show the 6th brand, the 7th brand, and the 4th brand. Well, what is that? Well, let's look at that grid. Here's my brands, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the 6th one is Honda, the 7th one is Toyota, and the 4th one was Kia. And that's exactly what it shows. On the first concept, it shows Honda. Second concept, it shows Toyota. And the third concept, it shows the 4th one, which is Kia. That's really what the experimental design basically codes for. And that's how the rest of the attributes kind of verge. And as the respondent goes to the next task and the next task and the next task, you know, this goes at least to 10, then these vary based on these numbers here. That's the experimental design. And let's just touch, Tristan, you were just a second ahead of me. Let's talk about this none option. Because in the respondents was shown this task and says, which of these would you choose? Which would you choose? And what if the respondent says, I actually don't like any of these. And I know that you're trying to force me into this, but I actually really don't like any of these. So then there's usually the opt-out option, which is, okay, which one would you like? And then there's the option that says, I would not purchase any of these. And then you click, I would not purchase any of these. And now you understand, the model will understand that no, none of these is good for me. Now there's another way to do the none option, which is called the dual response none, which allows you to still select one. Let's say you select product number 2, but then it says, the product that you selected, would you actually pick that product if it was available to you? And you say, you know what, you made me choose one. I chose number 2, but really I would not. And you click no. There's a little bit of a difference in how then they will be calculated, because in the first option, the model does not learn anything about your preferences. It just says, no, I wouldn't. Okay. In the second option, the model will still learn about, yes, I like it, but don't make it so important for me. So yes, I liked it, but no, I still wouldn't select it. So there's a little bit of a different learning of how the model will learn based on these. Both of them are very accurate when it comes to, very good when it comes to estimations. So that is a none. Hopefully that helped, Tristan. Let's talk about a design type. And one of the most common design types is what's called balanced overlap, experimental design. Okay, and what does that mean, balanced overlap? Okay, so balanced, it's actually two different concepts kind of put together. Number one is balanced, and balanced means that you want to have in your design almost close to equal representation of all the attribute levels. Okay, you don't want to, for example, brand, you don't want to show a lot of Lexus, a lot of Hyundai, but you don't show a lot of Ford. The model says, well, you know what? I haven't learned a lot about Ford. It hasn't really been shown a lot. So you want to make sure that all of the attribute levels for every one of the attributes is shown about equal times. And the second thing that is the overlap. What is an overlap? Well, in this case, you can see, well, the car type is a sedan, but you show compact twice. There's an overlap here. And why is an overlap important? Why is the overlap important in learning? The reason is, what if you have somebody that really likes compact cars? And every time, if you were to show compact car maybe once, then that person would always select compact. Okay. Well, if you have an overlap, the model will say, yes, I know you like compact cars, but can you teach the model something else? Like, what else do you like? So it shows compact twice, and this person will be like, okay, I got my compact cars. Now I'm going to choose Hyundai because I like Hyundai. So the model will then learn, okay, what else do you like beyond the compact car? So that's the overlap part. When it comes to, okay, the second concept that I want to walk you guys through here quickly is prohibitions. Okay, and what are prohibitions? Well, prohibitions are rules that you can set into your experimental design that prohibit certain attribute levels to appear together. Okay, so for example, there's no such thing as a gasoline Tesla. Okay, so you can set up a rule in your design that says, okay, whenever it's Tesla, make sure that it's electric. Okay, so that's prohibitions. And clients often really demand a lot of prohibitions, and you need to be very careful with prohibitions. Okay, the reason you need to be very careful with prohibitions is because in this choice exercise, you're teaching the model at this point. You want to teach the model how important various things are. You're not necessarily setting things up in how things are in the real world. Okay. Now, if there's something that is absolutely does not exist, like a gasoline Tesla, set up a prohibition for that. But be careful. Don't be too prohibitions happy, because that actually makes your model worse. The model has less chance of learning. So be very careful with setting prohibitions. And oftentimes you may need to push back to the client and say, listen, I understand that this doesn't exist in the real world right now, but what if it were to exist? Can we set something up where we allow the model to learn? And at the back end, when we create market simulation, we can say, okay, well, this doesn't exist in the real world. Let's not set up the simulator that way. But in the choice task, when the model is learning, be very careful. The more prohibitions you have, the worse your model will be. Okay. So that's prohibitions. So let's jump over to the utility. What is the concept of utility? What is it? Let's take a step back and let's start with economic theory, okay? Because people familiar with economic theory, they should be familiar with utility, which refers to really the satisfaction or the value that individuals get from consuming goods, services, or engaging in certain activities. This is how happy I am from purchasing this car or going on this trip, or visiting a new country. This is my utility. And of course, then there's the concept of diminishing returns when it comes to utilities as you repeat purchases. But utility theory really forms the basis for analyzing consumer behavior. And it's used in demand theory and especially in determining the prices and the quantities. Now, moving forward in conjoint analysis, we usually assume that the total utility of a product, or the total value or satisfaction that you get out of it, is the sum of its part worth utilities. Now, there's ways that you can actually do it where it doesn't necessarily have to be the sum, but most often than not, in conjoint analysis, we assume that it is the sum of the various part utilities, and we call these part worth utilities, which is the value for the various attributes or the components that the customers get out of it, such as the brand, the size, the color, the engine. And as you vary these attributes, the sum of all of these will create this total utility. Now, the total utility. Actually, let's talk a little bit about, before I go into the total utility, let's just talk about the estimation of the utility. So conjoint analysis estimates what's called utility scores. And think about them as the scores that reflect the level of value or satisfaction that particular attribute level provides. In fact, there's one methodology, what's called hierarchical Bayesian estimation method. I'll talk about it just a little bit more in a second, and where each respondent's utility score gets calculated on every one of the attribute levels. Okay, so in this case, we're looking at the utilities for, let's say a credit card, and the first attribute is the credit card issuer. It can be Wells Fargo, Citi, Chase, etc. There's another attribute, which is the annual fee for the credit card. And there's utility scores calculated for every one of the respondents. So if I were to let's dive a little bit deeper. Let's put a magnifying glass over some of these numbers. Okay, so the utility scores, they often tend to be zero-centered. Okay, for each attribute. So within each attribute, which is the credit card issuer here, these numbers here for the third respondent. So these rows correspond to each survey respondent, survey taker. Within each attribute, they add to a zero, and they're relative to one another. So, for example, in this case, you can see that Wells Fargo and Citi, they have negative numbers. That negative means bad. Okay, positive means better, more preferred, less preferred. But that doesn't mean, and this is a very important point, that doesn't mean that people don't like a Wells Fargo card or a Citi card. That just means that within this set of brands, they're less preferred than Chase, than Discover, et cetera, et cetera. If you had a different set of brands here, these numbers would be very different. If you have a different set of brands here, they may actually be positive. We don't actually know, but in this set, they're less preferred. Okay, so these are utility scores that get calculated. And I mentioned the estimation approach called hierarchical Bayesian. Okay, there's really two things kind of put together, hierarchical and Bayesian. But basically what that means in high level is that this statistical technique is used to get individual level, allows you to get individual level. In other words, each respondent, their preferences. And then you can also do aggregate preferences. Now, you don't have to have hierarchical Bayesian technique. You don't always need individual utilities. Sometimes all you need is, I just want to know what the preferences are for Wells Fargo, Citi, Chase. And in fact, for a lot of estimations, you can also use, and the method for that is called multinomial logit, which is a close cousin of binomial logistic regression, which is a cousin of regression. So you go from regression to binomial. A lot of you guys are familiar with binomial regression, where it's a yes or no, or purchase or not purchase. Well, multinomial logistic is just basically one step further, where you have, more than one potential outcome. That's a multinomial logistic regression technique and logit technique, and that gives you utility scores for the attributes and their levels. Now, if you use hierarchical Bayesian technique, then you will get utility scores for every one of the respondents. And that's basically the hierarchical Bayesian in a high level. It's basically comes from the practices of hierarchical modeling. And hierarchical means there's a higher level and a lower level, an upper level and lower level. And basically there's the higher level or upper level, which is basically an aggregate group of all of the people. That's a higher level. And the lower level is every one of the individuals. That's hierarchical. And then when it comes to Bayesian statistics, that's where the hierarchical Bayesian comes. Bayesian statistics really basically just updating our beliefs. And in this case, updating the utilities by learning about preferences in a higher level and a group level. Now I learn in the group level, let me actually update at each individual's score based on that. But if you don't remember any of that, all you need to remember is if you want to get individual level utility scores, you want to do the hierarchical Bayesian technique. Okay. Well, what are these utilities for? You saw these numbers, and they sometimes look like random numbers. What is that for? Let's take a second here. For example, part worth utility scores, as we calculated it for every one of the attribute levels. In this case, let's say we have a Chevy, which is a sedan, sells for $54,000. It's a 5-seater, it's purple. Every one of these we created and we calculated or estimated a utility score. And as you mentioned, they add up to a total utility score. We basically constructed a total utility score from a product that we constructed. Maybe this product doesn't actually even exist in the real world, right? But we just created a total utility score for this product. So if we created this product's total utility score, we could create or construct several other products. What if I were to construct a Chevrolet here, and a Kia, and a Tesla, and all of those? And now we could have the total utility score for every one of these, and might as well do that. And what if I create the market, the competitive landscape? Now, if you can create a competitive landscape, let's just do that here very quickly. Then here's my product. Let's say I'm a Chevy manager, and here's my total utility score for this particular product. And I created a competitor, which is Volkswagen, and that's their total utility score for this particular product of theirs. And for Kia and for Hyundai, and I created a competitive landscape. Now, of course, it's rare that you only have 4 products in your market, but let's imagine that you have 10, and that's your competitive market. You can apply these total utility scores to what's called a preference share equation, which is right here. And the preference share equation will tell you what's the probability that this product would be selected within this set of competitive products. And that's basically used, it's called the preference share. And the preference share is often used to understand a potential appeal for a product in a competitive set of market landscape. And that's really what that means. And that's extremely useful because you can then use it for estimating market share. Now, it's not the same as a market share. A market share has so many other components about it. It has awareness and distribution and potential, sales, the sales team's skill set and all those kind of things. But if you're just trying to understand how appealing is my product, then it's excellent to use this kind of estimation using the total utility scores that we just calculated earlier from the components within a market set of products, competitive product. Your preference share will give you a really good indication of preference within for your product. Now, let's take a step further. You can now then, well, now you have the preference share scores for this competitive set of products. You can create what if scenarios. Okay, that's great. My product has a 26% preference, or and technically a probability of being selected out of this set of products. But you can now say, okay, what if I, instead of with financing, I change it to without financing? How would that change the preference for my product? What if I sell it not for $54,000 but for $40,000? What would that do to my preference share? And so this is basically how simulators are created from a conjoint analysis. And we will have a webinar later, actually this year, about how to create simulators and how to do all these simulators. That's beyond today's topic. But I hope you guys can see the amazing capabilities that you can do once you actually have created a conjoint analysis on all these choice tasks. And now you can take it to understanding preference for that product. You can understanding the value of every one of these components and how that impacts your opportunity or your share or your preference in the market. Okay, so I need to, running fast on time, so I need to move forward. What else can you do? Well, now that we've created a conjoint analysis, we can actually create a sensitivity chart. And for a sensitivity chart, if you create your little market here, and let's say this is my competitive set, of course, it's rare that's only 4, but let's say you have 10 products here. What is the sensitivity if I were to change pricing? If I were to change pricing, how would my share of preference share change? And where do I see larger drops? Where do I see, if I go from this price to that price, that it's a threshold in pricing? So now keep in mind, this line here is always context related. What that means is this line is not going to be the same if you have, a different set of competitors. But that's why it's a very smart thing to do, to really think through what is my main competitive market, who are the products that I'm competing against, who are the people that are substituting my products for, or my product is a good substitute for, and set up that market which will reflect, your sensitivity the best. Okay, so then moving on very quickly, what else can you do? Well, one of the most common things that people use conjoint analysis for, again, there's so many ways that you can use it, is what's called willingness to pay. So you can understand consumers' willingness to pay for a feature that is potentially something that you're considering in your product. In this case, going from a gasoline car to being this car, an electric car, people are willing to pay an extra. In this case, this is not necessarily a real example, but you can understand what are people willing to pay for if you go from gasoline to a hybrid to an electric, or you go from a reduced 7-second acceleration to 6 seconds to 5 seconds to 4 seconds. How much more are people willing to pay for that? And then you can go to operations and say, hey, people are willing to pay an extra $5,000 to go from 7 seconds to 4 seconds of acceleration. That would mean this for our sales. Can we actually invest into a capability based on that? So fantastic ways to use conjoint analysis to understand some of these important consumer preferences and behaviors based on that. So that said, what I'm going to do right now, and we're going to be running out of time, so we're not going to be analyzing it, but we're going to do an actual project. Let's do an actual project here, guys. We're going to do it fairly quickly. Let's pretend that a client reached out to you and he and his company are considering a new mobile phone. Okay, and the new mobile phone targets teenagers. They say it's a safe phone and that has no social media on it, and the apps are curated for child safety. And they come to you and say, hey, can you set up a market research study? Because I have a couple of objectives. So for example, I'd really like to understand, is there even interest in such a product? Are people really interested in a safe phone for teenagers in today's market environment? And the second thing I'd like to understand is, are there customer segments that find the product more appealing? Are they more appealing than others? So this is really my business objective here. And you as a consultant or you as a market research expert, you say, you know what? Let's translate some of your business objectives into the right methodology. Okay, so first, can we measure and quantify potential demand here? And can we identify market segments that value this product highly? Well, you say, well, I know that conjoint analysis estimates preference share within a competitive set, and that's going to be fantastic for answering this question. And also, you know that total utilities for a product can be used to segment and profile customers. So I'm going to use conjoint analysis, and let's just go ahead and do that right now, actually, before time is over. So we're going to use an amazing tool that's available, which is called Discover. And this is, I know that I work in marketing, but I'm going to show you how amazingly easy it is to set up something as complicated and complex as a conjoint analysis in this tool. And I'm going to open up Discover. We're going to create a quick survey here to be able to do that. One of the things I want to tell you, but we're going to go to Discover. But I want you to know that you actually now, as a webinar participant, have access to a free version of Discover. And please, please, please mark this down here, www.sawtoothsoftware.com/discover. Open it up in another browser or anything like that. You're not going to have to do the project here. I'm going to do the project. You can watch me right now, but I'm going to show you how easy it is to do. But you actually have access to it. You can log in, you can register, you can log in. You have a free version of it. Now, the free version will allow you to actually create conjoint analysis, max diff, surveys, all of those things that you can do for free. Now, the limitation is that you can actually field a survey up to 50 participants, which is enough for you to try it in your own organization, smaller samples, but all of the capabilities are available to you. So please go ahead and do sawtoothsoftware.com/discover where you can sign up. And I'm going to pull up Discover right now, and let's just do this project here to show you the quick minutes that will take to create something like that. So I'm pulling up Discover here. This is Discover. I've already logged in. I'm going to create a new survey. Okay. And that's going to include conjoint analysis. Okay. And I'm going to copy my questions in there just to move a little bit faster. So here's my new survey. And I'm going to call this survey here. I'm going to call this survey mobile phone survey. Good. And I'm going to add the first question. Let's just make sure that everybody who starts here, I'm going to start with the text page here. I'm going to welcome people in this. Let me just try it again one more time. I'm going to add a text here. Oh, here we go. Here's my first. I'm just going to say, welcome people here. Just going to copy it here. This is my first question here. Thank you for participating in the survey. And let's add it make it a little bit nicer. And that's my first question here, just welcoming people. And then I'll go add. And I'm going to add a single select because one of the things that's going to help me is, here we go. Let's do a single select here. And one of the things that is going to help me segment people is if I understand something about you. So I don't want to just run into a conjoint analysis. And let's just say, imagine that your son and daughter is looking to get a new mobile phone. She came to you and you decided that it was a good idea. So what is it that I want you to do? Okay, first things first. So first, the question really is, I'm going to ask you is, how old is the child that you'll be purchasing this phone for? Okay, I'm going to use this to segment people based on that one. And let's just give them some options here, potentially. All right, so it can be 2 to 6 years old, 7 to 10 years old, 10 to 12 years old, 13 to 18. Okay, that's great. And next, we're going to go into then the conjoint analysis. But before I go into the conjoint analysis, I'd like to actually just give you guys a little bit of an instruction. It's a good idea to kind of give people instruction about what they're going to be doing here. Okay, so over the next few pages, you'll see a choice exercise. You will see a couple of mobile phone offerings presented to you. These offerings will change from screen to screen, and please select the offering on the screen, on each screen, that most closely aligns with what you would like to do, okay, that we'd like to purchase for your son or daughter. Okay, so then now we're ready. This is what the respondents will see. Let's add a conjoint analysis here right now. All right, so exercises, let's do a conjoint analysis, a choice-based conjoint that we're going to be adding here. And here we go. And here's the opportunity. I'm going to ask the question that everybody will see on the very top. And the very top question will be on each of the choice exercise or choice task. Is going to be, imagine you're looking for a mobile phone for your son or daughter. If these are the only choices available, which of these phones would you select? Well, let's enter the first attribute, and the first attribute is going to be, what type of phone will it actually be? The phone model. And what kind of models would we add here? Well, what are the options in this? In reality, really, what are the options that you would add? What the purchase for your child? Well, you can purchase a non-branded basic phone. Maybe you get it on on eBay or whatever. You can get an LG smartphone that's faster than the basic. You can have a 3-year-old iPhone or Samsung, almost like a new one. This is probably what you would get on eBay. You could get a 1-year-old iPhone or Samsung. It's like new. You could have a 1-year-old never used iPhone or Samsung, or you can get the latest iPhone or Google Pixel. Okay, that's good. Let's add the next attribute. The next attribute is now, what kind of plan would you sign up for your child? Okay, maybe it's a fancy plan, or maybe just, these are the plans that you could set up. Actually, let me just add, this is the attribute is called phone plan. I know how to spell. It can be a $99, $9.99 unlimited talk, and you can only text. There's no MMS, just SMS. $19.99 unlimited talk, but MMS. You can have $25.99 unlimited talk for MMS, $34.99 unlimited talk and MMS, or $44.99 unlimited talk MMS on 5G. Okay, good. Now let's add another attribute, and the last attribute here really is what apps are available. What apps are going to be available? Let's just see apps available. And well, all right, let's just see. No apps available on the phone. This is the most boring phone possible. Only apps vetted for child safety are available. All apps require parent permission to download, and unlimited apps, no parent permission needed. Okay. And guess what? We are basically done setting up our conjoint analysis. I'm going to make a couple of changes here, okay? Because one of the things that it shows here right now, it has 4 options next to one another. And it's not that easy to kind of do 4 options. So I'm going to go to settings. And I'm going to say, oh, I almost forgot. I actually do want to have a none option. Maybe none of these will be good for you. So let's include an option below the questions. That's a none option. And I'm going to say, I would not choose any of these for my child. Here we go. Now you have that here. And the other thing that I do want to change is I want to override the recommended exercises line. I don't want 4 next to one another. I actually want 3. It's a little bit easier. And I know that I get a warning that says, hey, by the way, your individual level utilities may not be as robust because you're only showing 3. And I say, I'm okay with that right now. So I'm kind of okay with that. Let me close these. And now I'm only showing 3 next to one another. And I am ready to publish my survey. I'm going to click publish right here. I know the warning. Thank you. And the survey is being published. And here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to share this survey with all of you. The survey with the link is right here. It's all ready. I'm going to say, copy this, and I'm going to put it in the chat. So I'm going to send this chat to all of you guys. I think I think everyone will get it if I put it in here. So what I'd like to ask you guys is if you take a minute or two to actually do the survey. I don't think I will have the chance um, to to show you how it can actually be analyzed. But once everybody fills out the survey, and it should really take you guys about 3 or 4 minutes, then we'll have the data, and I can show you the analysis as well. But we're probably going to run out. Oh, it says I have disabled the attendee chat. I have disabled the attendee chat. So can you guys tell me if drop it in the Q&A? Okay, if I drop it in the Q&A, then I will be able to do it there. The chat is displaced. Okay. Can I ask any of the panelists who have access to the chat to put it in the Q&A, because I'm actually not able to put it in the Q&A. Everyone. Here we go. Let me try it again. So I should be in the chat now. It says it's for everyone, I believe. So anyway, just because we're basically out of time, what I'd like to ask you guys is to fill out the survey. Take about 3 or 4 minutes to do that. And I will actually share the results with you guys. I have everybody's email address. I will share the results with every one of you guys, but I do want to point out that this is really how quick it is to set up a conjoint analysis and discover. And even though conjoint analysis is very complex, we've gone through all of that. I hope you really understand the value of it and the importance of it and the use of it. It can be used for so many different things, so many different market research needs. So my hope is that everybody has gotten so much more confident about the use of conjoint analysis and the various ways to do it. Please, please, please. Let me just go to here to Sawtooth software.com /discover. Go and get your own free copy of Discover and start playing with it, using it for various survey needs, and especially for choice-based kind of needs like conjoint analysis and MaxDiff. It's rare that you'll be given access to something as powerful as Discover for free right now to work on that.